I did think, "No one likes me, no one wants to be my friend, no one's ever gonna wanna date me, I'm gonna die alone." Like, you probably had
Mhm.
all these, like, negative thoughts, and then it's like, "Is that really reality, Carolyn?" You gotta ask yourself these questions like,
Right.
"This is really reality?" And when you're really stuck in it, you're gonna tell yourself yes.
The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wake Up Your Soul. Today's guest is Carolyn Skowron. She's going to talk to us about something I actually didn't know about, which is a nonverbal learning disorder, as well as a tragic car accident that changed her life. So let's welcome Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good. It's funny. I used to be a teacher and I actually used to work with kids with processing disorders. And so, like, I went and did all the trainings for that. And the nonverbal, maybe it's just called something different. I don't know. But the, yeah, nonverbal learning disorder is interesting. Usually I would think of somebody that can't speak at all.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I was reading your story, I was like, wait a minute, can she talk? How are we gonna do a podcast? Um, okay. I know the car accident comes later, and then there's
Mhm.
this whole, like, awakening that happens and thought that comes to you during that moment. I know I have a lot of parents that listen, so I do wanna talk about and you have a book as well, right? Where people
Mhm.
can read more of your story, but since I have parents as listeners, I wanna talk about this nonverbal learning disorder and what it looked like as a child.
Yeah, so, nonverbal learning disability disorder, either or, it is basically you're highly verbal, but you do struggle with conceptual skills, you struggle with spatial awareness, parallel parking, my arch nemesis, those type of things are still really hard for me even now being 29. But well, next week I'll be 29. But I
You
struggled.
hang on to that 28 as long as you can.
I know. I can't believe it. It's like I can't even this life is just going by so quickly, but I was a kid and I always felt like I never fit in because one of the things about nonverbal learning disability is that when you're thinking about your own life, your own thoughts, when you're like kind of ruminating, you kind of internalize even more than anyone else
Mm,
would. And so it definitely is constantly checking yourself and, how you battle your inner demons. And it's different because it's like, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression with this. And so it made just, I feel like it made it even more just on a different scale that I mean, if I didn't have nonverbal learning disorder, I don't know how different it would have been,
okay.
but I do know that I, from a young age, internalized every interaction. I never felt like I fit in. Never really had friends. If I did, they would come and go. People didn't like me. It was always whispers about me. If I saw one look of rejection or failure, it was like, oh my gosh, like the end of the world. And so it took so many years of therapy and really kind of rediscovering myself and learning to kind of embrace that
Mhm.
part of myself that when I was a kid, it was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm so different." But now it's important for me to kind of understand that with this learning disability also comes strengths,
Mm.
and writing is one of them, actually.
Okay, I mean, I'm listening to this, I'm like, "Well, that sounds like me in some ways." I very much have always internalized things and been a very, very deep thinker, but I also chopped some of that up to being a very empathic person. Then
Mhm.
and now, I was always somebody, I mean, but also as being very analytical, and that's me still to this day where I analyze every bit and piece of everything. I'm an overthinker and whatever.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to try to change that about me because I like that. But, I mean, it's crippling at times, but, here we are, we get through it. But as a kid, I felt like being empathic was me really just putting myself in somebody else's shoes and understanding where they were coming from with everything, and I would essentially feel their feelings too. But what you're saying is very interesting. What's the criteria, I guess, if somebody's trying to get diagnosed with that?
So, the
I don't know,
thing
okay, that
is
that that sounded really bad. If you're trying to, I don't know if anybody's trying to get diagnosed. If they're
well,
trying to find out what's wrong. Not wrong, but,
it was hard because well, the reason I actually didn't know for so long is because I always worked 10 times harder than anyone else for even half the progress of others. And so I had tutors for every subject, science, math, reading, really all of them. So I worked really, really hard. But then it caught up to me when I was in high school and we did those standardized tests that public schools do. And I did not do well on that. And
those are designed for failure. No, I'm just kidding.
they are, I swear they are, but I really struggled with a lot of that. And so it was kind of like, okay, why is she working really hard in school and the results aren't showing up? So
Mm,
it was kind of
yeah.
like, then we did the testing. And that was when I found out, literally my sophomore year of high school when I was 16, that I did, in fact, have this learning disability.
How is it
And
I wanna ask though, Carolyn, how is this different from, like, a visual processing disorder or audio processing? Like, how is that different?
I think one of the main things is that, I always like to say your brain is like a hamster wheel. So
Mhm,
you're constantly moving 100 miles a minute all the time. And I think that that is a little different because it's more kind of thinking rather than like seeing things on
mhm.
like paper or anything like that. But I would say that it's more about kind of it really is a processing thing in your brain, so, like, to that point could be true,
It
but
sounds like ADD then when you say it that way a little bit, like
it
you just
does.
can't get the focus.
It does, and it doesn't have, the recognition as much as it needs. It's
Mhm,
not a part of the DSM-5, which, if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's basically a list of accommodations and the learning disabilities which schools have and the accommodations that kids can get.
mhm,
So, when I was in high school, I didn't have well, when I was at public school before I went to boarding school for kids with nonverbal learning disability, any disability,
mhm,
really, kids had ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, all of the above. And, that was kind of a lot more accommodating. But in public high school, it was like you're kind of on your own and you're
mhm.
just like, I don't have extended test time. I don't have a quiet room, So it was very hard to
Yeah.
even figure all this out and then be like, okay, well, now that we know that you have this, how are we going to? Because the main thing at this point was getting me into college.
Mhm.
And I was not really on that path where I was at this public high school. So as a family, we made a really hard decision, but for me to go to boarding school so that I could, in fact, get into college.
Did you want to go to boarding school?
So it was kind of one of those things where it was a really quick turnaround. I found out I had my learning disability
Mhm.
in the fall of, I want to say it was like 2013 or something like
Okay.
that. Wow, years ago. And
How long ago?
yeah, wow, it's crazy. Time flies.
I say that because 'cause I'm 40, so that was a lot longer for me.
You do not look 40. I need to know your secret.
I don't know. I don't feel 40.
Yeah. But I found out that fall, and then January of the next semester, I'm going to boarding school. So I didn't have that much time to process what was happening because it felt like it was happening so fast. But I deep down, a part of me was like, you know what, this might be for the best.
Mhm.
And we were having back and forth conversations, and even with the admissions, and my parents would do anything for me. I have the most incredible parents and sister in the world. And my parents were like, we will move there because I went to boarding school in Connecticut. And they were like, we'll move there. And I was like, I don't want you to have to uproot your life too and everything. And the admissions lady advised strongly against it. And that was when we were like, okay, I gotta do this for myself. I
Mhm.
gotta really, people always say all the time, "What'd you do to get shipped off to boarding school?" But it
Well, that's
was,
what I was thinking.
I wanna think it was probably harder for my parents sometimes than me,
Mhm.
and it was really hard for all of us, but the end goal really was getting me to college. And so I think that that was the motivating factor, and that was kind of why I think I even just kept telling myself, like, I have to do this, even though I was struggling with anxiety and depression. I also kind of deep down was like, this is for the better, and
You
it's really hard.
probably well, I mean, I've been there. I had really bad depression in high school, and I can imagine where it's like when you feel like somebody's finally giving you a life raft, you're like, "Okay, maybe I should take this and just see what happens because it really can't get any worse," you know? It's like you were
Yeah.
already struggling in school and feeling depressed and having all these things going on, and it's like, "Well, here's an opportunity that's different than what I'm already doing, like, what do I have to lose?" And I'm sure you were tired of school being so hard and just the thought of it could get better, let me try this. So that's really awesome that you were willing to do that because it's hard. But I was 17 when I graduated. So I left high school early and went straight to college and just I had to make a change in my life because I was just struggling, not academically, but I was struggling emotionally so much in the environment. And I mean, similar like you, when it came to friends, it's weird because I don't know what other people would have said, but I always felt like an outcast and like I didn't have friends, but I did have friends, but it didn't feel that way. I don't know. I think from watching others, I always felt like I didn't have the same connection that others had with
Yeah.
people. I don't know. It's hard to
I understand that because I do feel like for a time there was like a couple friends, but my whole thing was kind of friends came and go, and it was
Mhm,
kind of never really, there was never really any solid people
mhm.
until very later on into high
Yeah.
school, which two of my best friends now are still two of my best friends to this day. So it took a long time to go through all of that just horrible experience and trying to fit in with people, and then figuring out, okay, maybe you do have one or two people, but when you're in that depressed mindset, when you're in that really, I mean, high school's hard. It's hard for anybody. And I can't imagine being a high schooler now with all the social media and everything, because I was just at the cusp of when Instagram was coming up and when Twitter was a thing. And so that was when social media was really kind of starting. So I constantly would see people posting with their friends and stuff. And so that didn't help my learning disability when I would be on my phone in my room by myself on a Friday night when everyone's at the football game and I don't have anyone to go with, and I'm just crying in my bed because I'm
Oh,
alone, and I
yeah.
feel like a loser, and I was never popular and I never had a lot of friends. I Guys didn't like me. I was just always kind of on my own is what it really felt like. And so it was really, really isolating after
Mhm.
a while.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about that more because I think so many people will listen and that will really resonate with them, just that
Mhm.
feeling of alone. I think people have been through that at some point or are still at that point and continue to be at that point. I mean, what do you do with yourself when you're feeling so alone and you feel that way? You just feel like there's no one really in your world.
I think that I will say this, I lived in a victim mindset for
Mhm,
many, many years. You cannot do that because it is just going to make everything that happens, it's just gonna make this whole spiral, spiral, spiral.
mhm,
It's gonna be like a ticking time bomb, which kind of is really what happened to me. And then, unfortunately, I mean, my freshman year of college, I almost did try to take my life, and it was years of all that bottled up. And
mhm,
so I think that the feeling of feeling alone and all of that, things that I wish I would have done back then that I know now is number one is going to a therapist and going consistently, being honest with the therapist about what's going on, what I really need. and not try to make it just be like, "Oh, everything's great, everything's fine, I'm doing okay," when I wasn't. And
Mhm.
so I think that's a really, really important thing. And some people will say, "Oh, therapy doesn't work," or this or that. But I honestly had to go through many therapists to even get to mine now. And so sometimes it does take work and it takes time,
Mhm.
but finding someone who you can talk to who's not in your everyday life is just very, very valuable tool. It can help you shift your perspective. It can help you just look at things differently or see things that you might not have seen. And, it also has taught me a lot of tools like mindfulness and gratitude. And one of the biggest things that my therapist taught me was something called the deep three, which is you take 3 deep breaths. So you inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And you do that 3 times, and it does help kind of slow down your breathing, and it is something that I live by it now. If I have PTSD while driving or I'll see a car coming like this and I'll freak out for a minute, I'll just do my deep 3,
Mhm.
and it really helps me just be like, "Okay, it's fine. Everything's fine. You're good. Relax." And I think that that's something that I didn't really see then, but I do think that understanding that there are tools, there are people that are there to help
Mhm.
you, and just being open. I think it's really hard to be vulnerable when you're going through all that. But I also think I've learned so much about myself with all the things that I've gone through.
Mhm.
And I think that just being open about our journeys and the things that we go through and being okay with, you know, I never thought I'd be telling my world my story, but here we are. And just being okay with even relating or helping one person, I think is really important too, because it's not about the numbers. It's really about, okay, how can I help even one person not go through that
Mhm.
experience that I went through, and hoping that they can learn from my mistakes so that they don't have to go through
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say I spent probably 20 years on and off with different therapists, different things, pills, no pills, talk therapy, all
Mhm.
the things. And throughout all of those years, I would say none of them really had any success or impact on me for the most part until I finally went to a cognitive behavioral therapist. And that's my absolute favorite personally. And when you were talking, I was thinking about how it is also important that we really take ownership for our thoughts as well and what part we are playing in it. And for me, I had to realize the self talk that I had going on in my head and I had to figure out how I can talk differently to myself. And I'm sure this was the same for you where you had all these self-beliefs that were not good, right? You
Yeah.
probably did think no one likes me, no one wants to be my friend, no one's ever going to want to date me. I'm going to die alone. Like you probably had
Mhm.
all these like negative thoughts and then it's like is that really reality, Carolyn? You got to ask yourself these questions like
Right.
this is really reality. And when you're really stuck in it, you're going to tell yourself, yes, probably, right? You're like, yes, yes, I'm so right. And it's like, but what if you just try to tell yourself a different narrative? Even if you don't believe it at first, try to tell
Mhm.
yourself a different narrative. And then eventually over time, your brain is going to start to see that, you know what? There actually might be a different way that this story can play out. So, for me, the cognitive behavioral therapy was very, very valuable, and I always highly, highly recommend it whenever this topic comes up. But now I want to lean into this part where you get into this car accident because you were talking about the PTSD and the car accident. So, what happened? How old were you, and what happened?
So this was my senior year of college. So this was 2020. This was COVID, March of 2020. And, I was starting to do a little bit better. I struggled a lot through college. I even went to outpatient therapy early on in college too. And I learned DBT, which is opposite dialectical behavior therapy. But all those things that had been leading up kind of been like a nudge. And then this car accident happens, and we're driving down the road, and I grab my seatbelt and we crash. It was like that fast,
Were you
fast.
driving or
No, I was in the back seat middle,
okay.
but I didn't have my seatbelt on right away. And I grabbed it as I saw that this car was flying at us. And I was like, all right, this is it. We're all going to die. Like that. I just remember seeing light and just being like, I'm going to die right now.
Mhm.
Grabbed my seatbelt, crashed, car was totaled.
So
Somehow everyone survived it.
you did get buckled in time?
I did,
Okay.
yes, which, I mean, it was the craziest thing ever, but I somehow survived it, and it was almost like that was my huge wake-up call. It woke me up to, wow, this can change in a second. Life can change in a second. It takes 1 second for something to change forever.
Mhm.
And it was almost like a light switch went off, and it was like, wow, I'm so grateful to be alive. I just want to be with my friends and my family. And I was just so content because I was like, I don't know how I walked away from that. Yes, I had completely bruised ribs, which they thought were broken, and they thought I had a brain bleed, which was luckily just a really severe concussion. But it really made me think like, I mean, I'm Christian, and I was like, there's a reason that God kept me alive in that car accident,
Mhm.
because if that wouldn't have, there's some sort of thing. I always say it's like God giving me my second chance at life.
Mhm.
And I wasn't going to use that lightly because I was like, I was supposed to die. I know I
Mhm.
was supposed to die, and I wasn't. And it was like, it was almost like that was basically the start of my testament to being open and vulnerable and talking about it and not being afraid to be like, this is what I've gone through so that hopefully you don't go through this. I'm recovering at home watching How I Met Your Mother, and I'm thinking about the number two. And I'm like, what is happening? Why is this number for like a day or two? It was in my head. And it was because I realized I had faced death not once, but twice. Once praying I would make it out of there, praying I didn't die, and once my best friend calling and saving my life.
Mhm.
And that was when I was like, there's something more here.
Mhm. So your best friend calling, I'm guessing this is back before the car accident when you were gonna have the attempt, you were saying?
This was 2016, yes.
Okay. So she called you, I guess, then and interrupted your plans. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your your story is interesting to me, and because I relate to it so much, I'm sure listeners are like, "Okay, I can't relate to all this craziness." But I totally relate because I was severely depressed and suicidal throughout my teenage years, and then in my early 20s, I started having all these cardiac problems. I actually just essentially began dying. My heart would just stop and
Wow.
completely flatline. And so I did this test where my heart stopped. They were recording it, and my heart stopped for 26 seconds completely. So there was no electrical signal in the body or anything like that, which is a little bit different than other experiences sometimes people have with their near death experiences, where there's sort of an electrical signal and there's something there. There was nothing. And I always say kind of the same thing that you're saying, God brought me back for a second chance, but also I felt like he was showing me, like, do you really want this? You've been
Yeah.
depressed for years. You think it's better on the other side. And honestly can't remember at that point in time. I don't know that I was really battling depression, but maybe I needed that because I did battle depression again later after that. But I also knew what it was like to die and what it felt like to come back and have that second chance
Wow.
and just, yeah, feel that value in life and what a gift it is because we don't feel that when we're born, we're just a little
No.
baby. But
Right.
when you get to come back as an adult, it means a lot. Nobody
Mhm.
nobody loves you more, right, than the Lord, obviously, in those situations. So, yeah, so I love your story.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what are you doing now with your story? What is your primary message that you're sharing with people, and how are you spreading it?
So I am actually a public speaker as well
Okay.
as author. So I go to schools, colleges, really whoever books me, and go and speak about adaptability, resilience, and positivity, and taking my story for what it was and turning it into this is what it's turning into now. And you can turn your life from that moment where you feel like you're so broken and you feel like it's never going to get better to being resilient, getting back up to keep going and to just keep knowing that you're going to get through those moments you think that you might not in that moment, but you already made it through 100% of your worst days.
Mhm. Do you have some key messages that you drive home when you give your talks?
One of the biggest things I think is really kind of I I say that I really shouldn't be here today, and because of that, I had a purpose, and
Mhm.
I also talk about my building blocks, which are for so long: depression, anxiety, self harm, all this stuff. But now they're positivity, resilience, and adaptability because I've learned how to shift my building blocks of my life. And everyone can do that with their own story, with their own journey, by taking whatever is their story right now and taking one step today by changing their mindset or just doing one small thing today to better themselves, to go to therapy, to take that next step that they need to do. And hopefully that they can help their own story and rewrite their story in a way because your building blocks can change. Like when you're a kid and you're playing with those blocks, you can change, they can fall down, but you can rebuild.
Yeah.
And that is really the main message.
Yeah. You're reminding me of something I saw someone I just absolutely love. I saw her in a clip from a podcast that she was on. She was on mine as well, Letitia. But anyway, so she was talking about, when you first see somebody, a lot of times your first thought is some sort of judgment thought, right? I mean, whether it's just like looking at you, I'm like, oh, she's a blonde, or you look at somebody like she was saying, you look at them, you think, oh, they're short or they're tall or whatever, right? And like, it's usually some sort of judgment thought. And she was saying how she's working on or maybe has accomplished just having that first thought be something beautiful about them. So making that your new habit and new perspective. And I think that's a really great way just to approach the world in general, right? Because sometimes, even like think about the weather. You open the door and you walk outside, and it's like your first thought is just the accuracy to you of what it is, right? Like, oh, it's hot, or oof, it's so cold, or whatever. But instead, what can you notice that's really nice about it? Even if it's really hot, it's like, oh, the sun is shining, and wow, look at all the birds that are out, or whatever. There's ways to start shifting your mind to having your first thought and initial response reaction be something more positive than it usually is.
For sure. I think that that's a good way of shifting your mindset and really retraining your brain. One of the things I've had to learn in therapy, outpatient therapy, all of that is retraining your brain, starting with those small things, whether it's changing your mindset or being mindful of something in that moment. And those little shifts are not an overnight thing, but it happens over time. And then you can start to, like you said, she's finding something positive in everybody. And that's a beautiful lesson that so many people could learn today in the broken world we live in today. Just finding something positive to be like, oh, instead of saying something like, oh, they're blonde or whatever, but it's like, oh, she has great energy or something like that. And
Mhm.
instead of making it all physical, because we do that,
Mhm.
we do have those unbiased opinions and stuff like that. And I think that just changing the way that we look at things. That's a
Mhm.
beautiful lesson.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you what you see when I'm guessing that you interact with the kids a little bit when you give talks and things because I've been asking around. I have children, so this is of interest to me, but I've been asking around and asking teenagers, what are they seeing and feeling is their biggest struggle? And a lot of them say just that self identity because,
Mhm.
as we're kind of talking about it now, social media is very prevalent. And I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I would love for schools to like, especially private schools, because they could more so, but be like, hey, we're a no social media type of school. Like, your kid can't have social media because it doesn't do them any
Yeah.
good. It
Uh,
doesn't. It just
it just
really doesn't.
destroys them. It
Yeah.
really destroys them, like, even now, and I'll admit it, I'll be the first to admit it, sometimes I'll have, like, spiral, be like, "Oh, that's looks so nice," or like, "Oh, I wish I looked like," and then I'm like, "Wait a second, stop. You're not doing this. Like, you have worked so many years to not do this, so get off social media, go outside, go do something so you're not focusing on it." But I think that's the thing with kids and social media at such a young age, it's like they're seeing everything. The whole world is at their fingertips, and so it's so scary that they can't even be alone with their thoughts anymore
Right.
because they're constantly consumed by social media, the internet, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so it's like kids don't even learn how to sit with their thoughts
Mhm.
anymore because it's all kind of just doom scrolling or whatever. And they're not taking that time to really think, oh, wait a second, I should get off social media right now. This
Yeah.
is not healthy. I'm spiraling or I'm comparing myself because that's what happens. They see these things. And even as an adult, we sometimes do it too. And we have to kind of reel ourselves back in. But we
Yeah.
can do it a little bit better than they can because,
Mhm.
like I was back then, it just sends you down a really bad spiral. And especially with these kids and the bullying today is I've never seen anything like it. It's
Yeah.
so horrible, and I was bullied, so I know, but I can't even imagine it on a social media scale.
Mhm.
And just to have the accountability, I think it's just really important that kids are trying to be open with their parents, but really more than that, I'm not a parent yet, but whenever I have a daughter, I'm gonna be like, "What are you doing?" I'm gonna be constantly checking in because you always want your kid to be doing the best, and when you see they're bullying someone or they're being bullied, it destroys you. I
Mhm.
see it happen with kids I've spoken to, and it breaks my heart because how can they switch this and change this and have schools, like you said, have a new policy, no social media,
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's just something needs to change. And I don't even know what that is right now because
Yeah.
we are in such a connected world and AI is going to make things even more
Yeah.
difficult. So it's so hard to watch that. Those kids that are getting bullied now, you just have to keep going and you have to just keep pushing through because it's not the rest of your life. It's really not.
Yeah. Well, and they'll actually be if they make it out, right? Unfortunately, but it's like
Yeah.
they will be the toughest ones later because
Right.
they will have gone through it and they will have the biggest hearts of anybody. But thinking about how that's their biggest struggle is just this self-identity. Social media is not going to help them at all, right? And they go
No.
online and they just scroll and scroll and they're seeing what they think they should be, who they think they should be. They don't know how to think for themselves. Like, and they're really not going to know how to think for themselves in 10, 15 years with all the AI, right? Like we are going to lose such touch with who we are as human beings and such
Right.
self-identity, which is weird because we're also in this weird place where there's like this heightened awareness of getting in touch with yourself, but then also, I don't know if that's why there is such a push with the social media and the AI. It's like they don't want that. They don't want people to feel more empowered and they want us to become a little more robotic, but it's not good, and I definitely plan on, as a mom, keeping my kids off social media. I say that now, but I mean, I will do my best, and I know there's a lot of different filtering things that you can do, and now I'm totally drawing a blank on it, but there's this phone, which actually I ordered for my daughter, but it's so cute. It's a phone that looks like the old school phones, or it's called tin can phone. Have you heard of those?
No, I never heard of this.
Yeah, so the one looks like a tin can, and then the other one looks like a really, really old school, like, landline, and they are Wi-Fi or landline based, but you essentially I think I don't have it yet, but you put in the numbers that your kid can communicate with, so
Oh,
yeah, so the phone will only ring with a friend that has been connected to your child. So it's really cool because I feel like we also have lost that ability to speak up and speak to adults as children, right? Like we used to, I don't know, when I was a kid, maybe not you because I'm older, but like we had to call somebody's landline, like, can I talk to her? But I think just that's still a way for kids to communicate with each other, but only
yeah.
they're safe people, right? You don't need to go
Yeah.
on social media where you're just like thrown out into the wild. So, I mean, we have ways, I think, to kind of help our kids still feel like they're modernizing their lives, but also protected a little bit and safe.
Yeah, that reminds me though, I remember even way back when I was a kid, there was something called a Firefly, and you could only, like, have the emergency number and then, like, a couple numbers on the phone. I never had that one, but
Okay.
I had the pink razor. So I always tell my friend, I'm like, "I should just get a pink razor because I hate this. I hate how people treat each other on social media and talk to each other. Like, it's just and I also think too, I'm like, would you ever really say that to someone's face? Even the negative comments I've gotten, I'm like, do you, like, feel better about yourself now? Because
I know.
10 years ago, that would destroy me, or you calling me
Yeah.
ugly or
Yeah.
saying that I have bad advice or whatever, that would destroy me, and now I'm like, "Okay, like,
Yeah.
you need to, like, go touch grass." You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
literally like, you have to make jokes of it, you have to
Yeah.
make light of it, and I feel like kids really have to see that too. If someone is mean to them, they have to make a joke of it because it will consume you. I mean, as a child, I was called Marvin the Martian because I had a big nose, frizzy hair, and yellow teeth, and that was like my name. And these boys would constantly call me that and make me feel horrible about myself and my nose. And it took me up until my early 20s. I would beg my parents. I'd be like, "I need a nose job, please, please, please." And I'm so thankful that they were like, "No, you're not doing that. You're beautiful. You don't need to do that." And because it's not authentic. And I think people are losing authenticity in so many ways. And
Yeah.
these kids are seeing these products that are for adults and they're running out and getting them just so everyone in their school has it. And it
It's
just,
crazy. Yes, there's
it
kids
blows my
using, like
mind.
yes, they're using, like, anti-wrinkle serums at, like, 10, and I'm like, "W why? No." Like, you don't need it. It's not gonna do anything for you. Like, your collagen, everything is working just fine. For the
Right.
record, I have not had Botox, but or anything actually.
Me
Uh
neither.
and I will not. But I
Yeah.
actually had my ears pinned when I was in I always forget. It was the summer of, like, 4th to 5th or 5th to 6th or something like that because I was getting called Dumbo every day, and I would come home crying all the time.
Aw,
And I remember the
awful.
surgeon yeah. And the surgeon actually told my parents that they should have done it sooner. And my parents asked me, though. My parents weren't like, "Hey, you need this, Andrea. You look like Dumbo." Like, they didn't say that at all, of course. But they just asked me if it would make me feel better and if I wanted to do it. And I guess that was what I wanted to do at that time. Honestly, I still probably would have done it. They were really bad. They were really bad. That's just not the look I'm going for. Even though, yes, I want to be super authentic. I don't know. I think it's, but anyway, that's a whole nother episode, I'd say. But the surgeon actually did tell my parents that they should have done it sooner because then I wouldn't have had to have gone through the trauma of being bullied and all that. And it's like, okay, that's a fair line of thinking, but gosh, like I really can't imagine just like doing plastic surgery on a child without them asking for it really because essentially that's what he's saying is like before they're really even asking or knowing, you're the one deciding that something's wrong with their look instead of like letting them decide I don't like this look that I have and I want to be a little bit different. I know. It's an interesting one because I sit with that too. Like, how would I feel? But I just, yeah.
'Cause I'm all about authenticity, I really am, but if kids get bullied for things of how they look or like my nose, you make that person feel so terrible and so insecure for years and a lot of therapy to get through it. But really, it's just like then they wanna change these things about themselves, and then they're doing these things and they're doing these lip fillers in high school and they're doing these injections and all this stuff, and I'm like, where did this world go wrong? Because it's like the beauty standard too for these kids. It's like, what even is beauty? Who gets to decide that?
I
It's
was
like,
thinking about that the other day. I was like, what does a 40-year-old even look like anymore? Because, I mean, this, I guess, because I haven't done anything to my face. I think about that all the time. I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know what a 40, 50-year-old, 60-year-old woman would even look like because nobody's real anymore. Everybody is so injected with all the things. And it's so funny because I've seen women where I'm like, have you seen your profile? Like, okay, I'm sounding super judgy. I'm sorry. But I've seen women where I'm, like, looking at them thinking, like, have you looked in the mirror or taken a picture from the side because your lips are sticking out, like, further than your nose? It looks ridiculous. So, like,
yeah,
they
yeah,
go do all this stuff where I'm like, you don't even like, I thought originally we were doing Botox and doing these things to make ourselves retain our youth and look young. But everything that everybody is doing to their face, it doesn't make them look like anybody they ever were. Like, you never looked like a duck, not at any point in your life.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
And
so what is this?
it's like aging is actually, my boyfriend sent me this the other day. I think it was Cameron Diaz or something, and she said, "I'm not getting anything done to my face because aging is beautiful." And that is just such a reminder that it's okay to have wrinkles and to age a little bit because really aging is just all these years you're living, and living
Yeah,
is a gift. And my car accident proved that. Like, that could have been the end. And I think that's something that we lose sight of so often. And it's just something that I really hope that as a society, there can be some sort of standard that people would just want to accept themselves for who they are.
mhm,
I'm all for being the best version of you. And I think that if that's what you're doing to really make yourself feel better, then go for it. But the problem is so many people are not doing it for that reason
yeah.
anymore.
No, exactly. If you're doing it because you just love it, but I hope you love yourself either way, and
Right.
like I love myself and who I am, but I like my face better with makeup. I just do, and that's okay. It's not like I hate myself if I'm not wearing makeup, but I'd prefer the makeup look. It's a preference. So hopefully people are dealing with all those internal traumas and things because yeah, as adults and the older generation, we have to set an example for the younger ones, and showing them that we can accept ourselves for who we are is very important. Thank you so much for being here. Is there any other message that you think is just super valuable that you need to get out there?
I think we should just really work on breaking the stigma and really promoting kindness. I have this sweatshirt, it costs $0 to be kind. And I think that's such a message that people just need to keep recognizing because being kind, that was how I was raised. That's
Yeah.
how I really think that as a society, we should really try to be. And when someone's not being kind to someone, stick up for them. I think that it's just important that we use our voices.
Yeah.
I think for so many years I was afraid to use my voice. So I think that if someone has a story or a message that they want to share, don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to talk about the things that you've gone through. Share your story. It's a beautiful thing. And I have my book right here, Unbreakable. But this really is a testament to all the things that I've gone through and gotten through to show other people that whatever they're struggling with in their own life right now,
Mhm.
really take the time to be like, where am I at in my life?
Mhm.
And if you need help and if you know you need help, don't wait. Don't be ashamed. There's nothing wrong with getting some help because I'm telling you, if I didn't get help, I would not be here today.
Yeah, no, same. Uh, Thank you so much for being here. Where can people connect with you or buy the book?
Yes. So Unbreakable is available on Amazon. It's also available on my website, which is carolynsophia.com. I also do speaking as well. So if you need a speaker, there's a form there as well. My speaker kit's available to download as well. And I think that's all.
Thank you.